Hi everybody, it's 314 Reactor here. Today, I'm going to be looking into why I think Halo 1 still looks pretty damn good even 19 years after release. So we're going to be using Halo, the Master Chief Collection version for this in the old graphic. I was tempted to try and capture footage from my old Xbox, but I don't have a capture card. So the most efficient way to do this is to use the Master Chief Collection with the classic graphics. So let's dive right in and have a look. Alrighty, so one of the first things that I always really love about the original Halo is the textures on metal, like this. You can see here, it looks pretty damn good for something from 2001. You can see the bump mapping there. Very nicely done. Nice specular mapping there as well. And most importantly, it looks very metallic. Some people may disagree, but I still think that looks pretty damn metallic-y. Some of the later games, especially Halo 3, had the higher resolution textures and stuff, but they still looked a bit plasticky to me. Now when we zoom in, you can see the textures are high resolution, so that even when you zoom in, it still looks pretty good. And this is all present on the original Xbox version as well. And in Halo 2, this level of complexity with the textures is completely absent. I think because they had to free up memory for all the normal maps that they were applying to characters and stuff like that. And I don't think the trade-off was worth it, because it made the characters look overall very plasticky. The overall skybox looks very nice as well. Even when you zoom in, it still looks pretty good. You got the flashing stars there. That waterfall still looks really nice. This is all for 2001. And again, you got the wood textures here. As you get close, they don't become blurry or horrible. Same with the leaves there. Look at the detail on the leaves. So now another thing, sun shafts coming through the trees there. That is beautiful. A 2001 original Xbox with a 733 megahertz copper mine, I think Pentium 3 based CPU, 64 megs of RAM, and I think the equivalent of a GeForce 3. That's some really nice stuff. And interestingly, if we switch to the newer graphics, those sun shafts aren't there. So this is based on the remake from 2011, the anniversary edition. It's had a few enhancements since then with the Master Chief Collection and the PC release, but that's basically what it looked like when it came out in 2011 on the Xbox 360. Halo 2. Level Uprising, old graphics. Got quite a large area here, but it's quite plasticky. The geometry doesn't look as good. It just looks very basic. Even the skybox just looks nowhere near as good as what we saw in Halo 1. The stars aren't really twinkling. The sun doesn't have the sun rays, at least not on this level. So we look at the rock textures here. They're not too bad. Not quite as detailed as Halo 1. Tree textures, similar. So the weapon models, they do look aged now. The shading on the assault rifle is still quite nice. Obviously the textures aren't super high res. You can see some low res textures here. And that's the kind of texture resolution that Halo 2 had pretty much everywhere in it. And if we look at the characters, there's no normal mapping on them, so they all look kind of flat, and they do look like dated now, obviously, because it's a 19-year-old game. But if you compare these to the stuff you see in Halo 2, and even 3 to a degree, these look actually more aesthetically pleasing to me, especially the human models, because in Halo 2 and 3, the normal mapping on them just made them look plasticky and horrible. So I guess they have high resolution textures on them, but it's just that kind of awkward era of normal mapping where it just looks super plasticky. And the Flood here, mega plasticky as well. And the Brute as well. I mean, look at that. And here we are with the Halo 3 models. And the characters still look a bit plasticky, but far less plasticky than they do in Halo 2. So I actually prefer like this. And I wish they had just, in Halo 2 at least, saved that memory to keep the environment textures up to speed. Okay, so here we are in Halo 2 classic graphics. This is where I just want to look at some of the metal textures that are present in the game. So as we can see here, decent resolution here, but still not amazing. Some nice normal mapping I think there. But the floor, it just looks horrible. The specular is all gone. And it just looks really plasticky. This looks really low res. This looks really low res. The detail texturing is gone. You can see the models of the Marines and stuff here. They look slightly better than the ones in Halo 1, but not great. They just have high resolution textures there, normal mapping on, but they still don't look great. So here we see more of what I'm talking about. See, the characters, they look, you know, low resolution, obviously not great, but they don't look plasticky. So here we can see the Marines in Halo 3. Again, very, very plasticky. But not as bad as Halo 2's plasticky. The specular maps in Halo 1 still look the best out of them all. Again, more example of really nice looking metal. Okay, so here we have a really good example of the bump mapping on the floor. As the lights from the Warthog hit it, it just looks so beautiful. Some people may disagree. It may just be subjective, but I still think these environments look good today. And now we're going to go to an area we're going to show off another thing that I still think looks really, really nice about Halo 1. And that is the lighting effects. So you can see they've got the bump mapping from the lights of the Warthog. You've got the lighting effects from the plasma pistol that Grunt's firing as it's lighting up the floor with a specular as he's throwing that grenade. The specular, the lighting, all reflecting off the floor, affecting the bump mapping. It looks metallic. It looks not overly shiny. It doesn't look plasticky. It looks like that floor is actually bumpy when it's not. It's all flat. One thing about Halo 1 is that the lighting is somewhat exaggerated, especially compared to later games like Halo 2 and onwards, where the lighting was toned down. Every shot they fire, you'll see here, there's a huge green glow around them that just lights up the ground beautifully. Look at that. Look at that. You've got the initial green glow, and then you've got the forward glow there, lighting up underneath it. Obviously on the Xbox, at this sort of distance, it wouldn't look as sharp on the ground. You'd be getting a trilinear or maybe even bilinear texture filtering, so it'd look really blurry. But with 16 anisotropic filtering, that looks really, really beautiful. Even so, I've played the Xbox version just the other day, and I still think all these lighting effects, textures, all still look really, really good. So here we are on the level of the Arbiter, Halo 2. These textures here are just awful. How are these textures so much worse than what we've seen in Halo 1? And even the plasma rifle here looks horrible. It just doesn't look good. I have nostalgia for Halo 1 and 2. I love them both. Especially 2, I have a lot of nostalgia for it. And in some ways, I really do love how it looks, but objectively, this just looks worse than Halo 1. I mean, look at the geometry. It's so basic. And it's not hidden by good textures or specular or bump mapping. You see, here we have an interesting Halo 1 text, where you can tell, nice and high res, looks really good. It has kind of repeating pattern on it. But then you look down, and then you've just got a really low res, horrible texture. Like if I zoom in on this texture, looks okay. Scratched up, detail. Look down, horrible, muddy, nasty. So as we go through this area, if we look at the floor here, there's specular on it, there's bump mapping on it. But compared to the metal textures in Halo 1, and if we throw a grenade over it, look at the way the light reflects. It's got that kind of similar bump mappy look to it, which looks good, don't get me wrong, but compared to the metallic reflection of the light that you'd get in Halo 1, no, it's just not there. And it was all to get these higher res textures and normal mapping on the characters. And all the lighting and stuff that we've seen from the weapons, it's so toned down in Halo 2. Yeah, Halo 2 to me was definitely a downgrade in graphics from Halo 1. Let's have a look at some similar environments in Halo 3. Here we are at some Forerunner Architecture. Now to me, these textures still look really good, but overall, it just has kind of a plasticky feel to it. So again, if we throw a grenade in here, that light off of it looks good, but it just doesn't look as good as the lighting and specular in Halo 1. Because it doesn't look metallic. But I don't know how they managed to nail this really good metallic look in Halo 1, but then 6 years later, downgrade it in a way to look more plasticky. I think that was just a result of how games kind of were at the time. Let's go forward to the Truth and Reconciliation, and we'll see some more of the graphics there. Okay, so this area does look a bit plain compared to the newer graphics, obviously. But still, you've got the lovely effects on the ground here. This is some night mission, so we'll be able to see the lighting effects even more clearly. But we will also see some of the parts that haven't held up well, like the older lighting system that doesn't handle darker areas so well. Like, especially there, you've got a lot of banding along the skybox, and these areas look a bit dull. You've got some banding in the darker areas. And if we go into the next area, we'll see all the lighting effects. So you can see all the different colors there, from the needler, the plasma pistols, the lovely purple lights coming from these turrets here. It's also more of an art style choice rather than a graphical thing, but the blood on the ground I really loved in Halo 1. Halo 1 manages to be colourful and vibrant, but also be gritty, which I found the other games didn't quite manage to achieve that balance. Halo 2 managed to be less colourful and less gritty at the same time. How much that muzzle flash from the plasma rifle is lighting up everything around it. But in later games, they really toned that muzzle flash lighting down. Even the needler, look. Pink colour there, lighting up everything around it. So one of the limitations here is, of course, the ground skyboxy sort of thing there. That doesn't look great. Something else, not so much around the graphics, but more the animations, is the reload on the assault rifle. If you look at this reload, it looks nice, it looks smooth, it looks natural, it looks like the Chief has done this thousands of times. It looks beautiful. I found the reloads in later games, Halo 2 and onwards, they just didn't look as good. And another thing is the melees. That feels like a lot of power in that melee. And even that melee, he is swinging that gun hard, and it's gonna hurt. In Halo 2 and beyond, and I'll give some examples of that. So here's the reload on the battle rifle. Doesn't look anywhere near as good as Halo 1's assault rifle reload. And the melee, that melee's not too bad. Still feels like there's a bit of weight to it, but it still doesn't feel like it has the impact of the assault rifle melee from Halo 1. Now, one of the worst melees is the SMG here. It just kind of looks like he's moving his hand up. To me, that just lacks the weight that Halo 1 had with its melees. And again, the floor texture here, when you zoom in, just looks nasty. And the specular is all gone. The lighting's all gone. I think a lot of this game was designed around the fact they were originally going to have lots of real-time shadowing in it, but they couldn't do it in the end. You know, like Doom 3 real-time shadowing. And that would have made it look way better if they could get that proper stencil engine going. But they just couldn't get it to work on Xbox, so all the environments just look really bland. If we look at some of the animations on the assault rifle on Halo 3, like the reload, it's a good animation, but is it as good as the animation from Halo 1's assault rifle on the reload? And then of course you got the sound of it, which just sounds so disappointing compared to Halo 1. And if we have a look at the melee animations, looks good, but just doesn't have that power to the animations. How did they get the animations so right in Halo 1? I will say though that the effects on the ground here when you shoot the ground, they do look very, very good though. Until they start mocapping it or recapturing how they got these good animations, these ones are always going to look the best. Again, at least in my opinion. Let me know if you disagree. And here we have the invisibility. That effect was in other games, but damn, that still looks really, really nice. Even now. Oh, yeah. So here we are inside the Truth and Reconciliation. This is another area where the metal textures still look really, really fantastic. So we look at the floor in here. That still holds up. The specular, the bump mapping, doesn't look plasticky. Looks nice and high res. Even when you zoom in, it still looks pretty good. Obviously on the original Xbox it wasn't at 4K, but the textures were that resolution and it had the bump mapping and stuff all over it. And of course the art style of the inside of the ship, really colourful, vibrant, awesome, something that Halo 2 lacked completely in the Covenant levels. This is the Covenant architecture that we get in Halo 2. Compared to what we've seen in Halo 1, really muted tones, low-res textures, all that shininess, bumpiness is all just gone. Now if you flick over to the new graphics, it sort of brings that back. Obviously, again, it's going to look better because it's the remaster, but I mean from a more art style perspective, like the lighting and vibrancy is way more what you'd expect from Covenant design from what we've seen in Halo 1. But in the old graphics, it's just very dull. Some of the environments in Halo 2, if you showed me them and I didn't know the series, and then showed me environments from Halo 1, there's some points where I would say that Halo 1 is the sequel. But here, just look at it. It looks beautiful, alien, vibrant. Pick up a plasma pistol. You got the green glow there mixing with the purple glow. Boom. Again, the nice sparks. Plasma glow. So if we look at a charge up shot here and fire it against the wall. That compared to what Halo 1 does with the charge up shot. I mean, that's it. No sparks, no cooldown, just a splat. So you do get little cooldowns here, but it doesn't really sell it to me that this is super hot plasma. The particle effects here, non-existent. There's no cooldown. There's some particle effects there, but they don't bounce as much compared to the shower of sparks and color and light. It was in Halo 1, just is lacking in Halo 2. So in Halo 3, have the plasma pistol here. Now the plasma pistol model looks really good. If we get a charged up shot, there's a bit more of a light coming from it than Halo 2. Not quite as strong as Halo 1's lighting, but pretty nice. That looks pretty damn good. Fire at a wall. There's more particles that come out than Halo 2. And there's some rocks that fly out. But overall, the particle effects in Halo 3 are just not as good as the particle effects in Halo 1. Like, look at the way these, like those shards, those little metal shards ping out. There's barely anything compared to what we see in Halo 1. And just look at the shower of particles there. Particles showering, blood flying out, blood splattering, colours everywhere, bullet decals. Maybe it's more realistic that particles just ping out like that from bullet shots. And they do bounce on the ground for a bit, but overall it's just not as good. A game that's 6 years older than this previous generation, and in some ways it still looks better. Just look at the light from that grenade. And all the light from the plasma flying around. So you've got the light from the plasma, you've got the sparks, particles flying around, the blood splatting out, the cooldown from the plasma shots. It still looks gorgeous. You've got textures here that don't quite hold up as well, textures on here that don't hold up quite as well. On the Xbox version, I think detailed textures were a lot more noticeable. So as you got close to walls like this, you would see detailed textures kick in and become higher res. I think because of the higher resolution of the port and due to extra memory, the actual detailed textures are already loaded. So all that detail on the textures is just already there. Another reason why this game just looks so good is that a lot of the textures, when you get up close, they still look pretty damn good. And here we are, Silent Cartographer. I mean, what do I need to say? This level is amazing on a technical level, on a gameplay level. The water there looks a bit repetitive, but it still looks good to me. The waves washing up there, the island itself. I mean, this is like Far Cry before Far Cry, or even Crysis before Crysis. It just looks so good. And look at the lighting effects there as soon as you land. And what we're going to look at here is a bit more of the particle effects. There you go, straight away. See those particle effects, the little rocks on the floor, the dust, the mud flying up. So this bit here looks really good. It's like low polygon, but the art style is built where it works around it. And again, doesn't look too plasticky. This rock, nice high-res textures again. So here we are on Halo 3 again. And you can see the texture resolution is back up to Halo 1 levels. And in some ways better. But it does have a slightly plasticky feel to it. I can see the rock there. The ground looks really good though. That really holds up. It's just ironic, the resolution of the texture on the sand here is basically the same resolution of the textures of the sand in Halo 1. But there's more variation to the texture in Halo 3. Now don't get me wrong, Halo 3 is a gorgeous game. I just think that there was an era of games between 2003 and 2012-ish where games just had kind of plasticky look to them. Guess that could look like wet rock or kind of clay. I don't think that's what it's supposed to be representing. Yeah, anyway, we're supposed to be looking at particle effects. See that? They bounce from the left on the metal off the rock to the side. It's like dynamic particles. Another thing, plasma. Same sort of thing. Nice bouncy particles flying off and cooling down dynamically. With also little bits of shrapnel flying off there as well, you can see. Little bits of metal pinging off. And the fact you can hear the particles pinging off. It's just such attention to detail. When a grenade goes in, huge splash of water comes up. These environments, they still look good. Just looks beautiful. There's areas that are very similar in Halo 2 and 3, and Halo 2 just looks muddy and awful. This is the area from Halo 2 with Forerunner Architecture. See the textures on the ground here, textures on the wall there, the specular. Let's get a close look, zoom in. Along here. Halo 1, zoom in on the floor here. Way better. And then you look at this bit here. As you get close, detail textures still look good. And as we head down to this area, pretty much the same texture as we've just seen in the Halo 2 area, but nice specular on it. Back to Halo 2. Big downgrade. Which is bizarre for 3 years, whole new game engine, and yeah, the end of a console's life cycle, pretty much. It was only about a year before 360 came out. Night and day. And in Halo 3, there's another one like this, but it looks plasticky. So here we are with the Forerunner Architecture. This is like Halo 2 levels of texturing. Not great. Much better here. The specular mapping looks really nice. Now, obviously, vehicles is where Halo 3 excels. Much better textures. Looks far better, obviously. So let's head inside. So here we are in the Forerunner internal area. Now this floor looks really good. Doesn't look plasticky. Looks nice and bumpy, specular, but not plasticky. And the lighting on it looks really nice as well. See, that looks like a floor that you'd see in Halo CE. With the lighting, the bumping and everything on it. And this is a 2007 game. And yet somehow that floor looks just as good as something from the 2001 game. It's just crazy how Halo 1 just managed to be so ahead of its time in many ways. So here we are. Here is where Halo really took my breath away years ago when I first played it in 2003, and still to this day I still think looks good. This is the area that really amazed me when I was younger. I mean, the scale of the game overall, but this is such a huge piece of geometry, and the fact you can go right down there. I've seen people like take a Banshee down there and stuff, and it goes for miles down there. Or at least it feels like it goes miles. It feels like it goes deep into the bowels of the Halo ring. I just want to take a look at this area here. Just the way that light's pulsing and lighting up those grooves in the wall there. I love how that looks. This is a game that I still really love how it looks. So this is one of the areas where you can see the screw-ups from Gearbox's port. That area should look fogged out and a lot better than that. But the main thing to look at here is just the scale of this area. It's a huge level and it all looks good. 2001, Xbox, 64 megabytes of RAM, meant for system and video memory. And you've got dudes running around down there. That's all loaded. You can go down there later. Huge canyons and valleys here. The ice effects down there. So these are like areas where there's low res textures and it doesn't look good. But for the most part, Halo 1 has high res textures. We're about to see some really cool effects here from the Wraith. Boom. Bits of snow flying off. Even the plasma ball there looks a bit out of date, but that still looks cool. And all the snow coming off here. Even when it doesn't look so great, it's still that attention to detail. The turret up there. Just look at that beautiful effect just glowing down like that. Again, just nice attention to detail. The bits of smoke coming off of it. That's what makes Halo 1 still look really nice. And of course, the color palette of Halo 1. Bright colors. Really nice. It looks like Guardians of the Galaxy or Infinity War. So if we look at the ground here, icy, nice specular. The texture resolution isn't too high, but that kind of works for snow. Now in Halo 2, in the quarantine zone, I'll show some footage of that. The overall level looks nowhere near as good. So here we see the equivalent, I guess, of Assault and Control Room in Halo 2. I guess the snow still looks kind of good here, but just looks kind of plasticky. See, these are some nice decent resolution textures in Halo 2, but for the most part, they're not all that high res. The lack of lighting, and some of the geometry here as well just looks really plain, and there's nothing really hiding the fact that it's very low poly geometry. Halo 1 explosion effects. Even the smoke trails from that rocket look really, really good. It's more of an art style choice, but you can see the explosion there. And the little, here we go, look. Look at the particles sparking off of that as it goes down. Let's have a look at an explosion again. So let's do a grenade explosion. That explosion looks awesome. I love the way it flies up as well, real powerful. Let's look at the ice. This brings me back. Nowadays you'd have screen space reflections on that ice, or maybe even ray trace reflections. It would be higher res. For 2001, that looks like pretty damn good ice. Feel free to disagree. The little cracks, the little bits of particles that fly off there, the bits of ice, really sells it to you that that is ice. And look at the amount of bullet holes and decals you can have, as well as all the blood laying around, and how long the shell casings last. This is something the other games I find just lack, even Halo 3, that attention to detail. So here we have another example of the cooldown on the plasma. And then we do this, charge up, boom. The way it sparks and crackles and then cools down as well. The vehicles, the textures on them aren't the best, but they don't look plasticky. So important. The explosion there is still awesome. All the stuff that comes out from it, the fire, the particle effects. That's pretty much all I can think of to show of why I think Halo 1 still looks good nearly 20 years later. And why Halo 2 and 3 don't necessarily hold up as well. Halo 2 especially. Nothing in Halo 1 looks too plasticky to me. It looks gritty and grounded, but at the same time, colourful and vibrant. Like they've managed to get that really nice balance. I mean, I guess the exaggerated lighting is sort of more of an artistic choice rather than a technical graphical aspect. And always fire up Halo 1 on my old Xbox. It looks beautiful. Even when I run it on a HD TV at 480p. Whoa! And look at the particle showers coming off of that. And the snow particles. Amazing. There we go. That's just awesome. That is why I think Halo 1 still looks good to this day. Do you agree with me? Not agree with me? Let me know in the comments. Please do leave a like and subscribe. Keep an eye out for future tech and gaming videos. And I will see you in the next one.